Evening, Rush Nation. How is everybody? Welcome to the IDP show with me, Nath Davis, and him, Mr. Brendan Veal. Afternoon, Brent. How are we?
Very well, mate. Very well. Nice bank holiday and some decent weather. The man cave is coming along slowly but surely. I've been keeping myself busy. So, how have you been?
Yeah, pretty good. It was a bit of a mad weekend of like most people, bank holiday weekend madness. Lots of sport, fair bit of betting on the golf. We went over to Norfolk, so give the electric car the run out. That was a squeaky bum moment there. Made it back, put it on the fast charger. Felt like I was going to blow up the batteries. Didn't really know what I was doing. But no, happy days. I'm back in one piece. So is the car. So we will crack on. So today we will be continuing our going through our IDP mock draft. Last week we done teams 1 to 4. Today we're going to be doing 5 to 8. Next week, the final 4 teams will be in obviously draft week next week. Are you looking forward to that, Bren, with all your Miami picks?
Yeah, all two of them away. 101 and 347 or wherever we're our 2 remaining pick now.
I'll see you Saturday.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's day one holds nothing for me. No, I mean, joking aside, I'm still going to enjoy it. I mean, we were talking off air about, because we normally always do something for it, and I'm not sure we will this year, but I think it'd be nice to just sort of sit back, take it all in, not be stressing about, what Chris Greer is going to get right or wrong as the last decade or so. Definitely looking forward to it. I think it's not. I think we're all. I don't know. It's a weird one, isn't it? Because it's not a stellar draft. I think everyone's sort of, on the same with that, but. Could that make it more interesting? I don't know. Are we going to see more teams sort of trading up or just gearing up for a bit more free agency? I don't know.
I'm expecting a bit of movement in on the trades of some of those draft positions, because there's a few teams that have got decent draft stock in that first round, and they can definitely make some moves and try and find that team that because there's a few teams that are hunting for quarterbacks. I don't really, with not a great deal of quarterback talent on the board, it's going to be quite interesting to see. I mean, we're lucky to see some of the edge rushers. I think they're going to dominate those first few picks, hopefully.
I think that and sort of teams looking at sort of boosting their O lines as well. I think that's where the main picks are going to be. The QB situation. Don't know. I mean, we're going to see movement for. What's going to happen with Jimmy G? What's going to happen with Baker? Is that sort of going to factor into teams sort of trading in or out of positions? Or are they just going to wait until the end of the draft?
Yeah.
It's
going to be interesting. I think some teams will have one eye on next year's draft as well. So I think there's going to be some.
Well, yeah, we are.
Yeah, but the QB side of things as well. I think there'll be some shifting around to trying to get those. Maybe to put together some kind of package for an early first round pick next year. There could be a lot of that going on. It's exciting stuff. So before we go into the IDP mock draft that we did and carrying on reviewing those teams and those picks, we're going to be doing our introduction to IDP piece that we started it off last week, which is really where we got asked a ton of questions throughout the year. And we answered a few on various different platforms, and some actually on Sleeper, some on Twitter, some just direct messages, some actually on the pods. And what we've done is we've collated all those, and we're asking them now on these set of pods, so we can answer them again, possibly differently to what we answered them before, because we hopefully have gained a bit more knowledge than then. But also. Just that they're in one place. So people starting IDP or thinking about getting into IDP can click on these, watch these videos or listen to the podcast and get the answers to those questions. So, Bren, we've got these questions. You got these questions ready for us. I've seen some of these this week, which was nice. So I've got a bit of a heads up on them. But yeah. far away. What have we got?
Just before we go into this, I just want to reassure everyone, anyone who watched last week, I have got the good charger plugged in.
Oh, yeah.
We're not going to have any technical issues. The phone's miles away. Because one thing I don't think you spotted last week, I kind of drifted off a little bit partway through the Q&A session before the battery stuff. I had the phone going mental. I had the wife ringing me and finally just picked up a text message saying, there's a crack in the bathtub.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Am I supposed to? And then 2 minutes time, I'm sort of stressing, trying to concentrate on what you're on about. And then, don't worry about it. It's a hair.
It's married life, mate. That's it. That's important stuff. You need to be on the ball with that.
We've done all our prep work. This week will go much, much smoother. I promise everyone. Right. Back to business.
Okay.
So let's delve into these questions. So top of the list, kicking off. We've been asked, why are we including QB hits in the scoring this season? So I'll turn that one over to Nate.
Yeah, well, we didn't include them last year, mainly because they're not recognised as a scoring metric in PFF. So when people do their rankings, it's not they're not there. So the issue is obviously if you include them and then you use somebody else's rankings, which obviously I did in our first year. I asked Murph for his rankings and then couldn't understand why they didn't match up. And then he said, oh, yeah, we don't include QB hits because they're not. So we dropped QB hits from the scoring.
Yeah.
Which was to do with mainly on the ranking side of things. However, the key is that we've got to try and we want to be able to value those players that do get pressure on a quarterback, but maybe don't get a sack. So especially interior guys. And a great example was Max Crosby, not an interior guy, an edge rusher, but last year, I mean, he got a ton of pressure on QBs, but didn't convert them into sacks. So he still deserves, obviously, those kind of points, and we need to recognise that kind of work as well. So I know the Fantasy and Frames guys, they've put QB hits in there, and it is mainly just to recognise that kind of pressure side of things. I know it's probably not the perfect statistic to do it. You've got a QB pressure one, however, the platform that we play on Sleeper, and at the moment there is, and we're looking at QB hits, that is the closest thing to it. So that's why it's in there. And yeah, when you look at how players scored last year, you can see that we are getting players that DLs that are in the mix, that are actually up at the top of the point scoring charts based on the fact that there is QB hits that they're registering. So it is a good metric from that point of view. And it's kind of like the best that we've got at the moment when we've got that. I know if you're using different platforms, you might have different ways, and then there's position specific stuff. So it depends, again, like always depends on your scoring, but we've put it in because we want to recognize those pressures.
Yeah. And as we said off there, I mean, just looking down the spreadsheet, going back to the Fantasy and Frames and sort of the pressure side of it, the QB pressures. It makes for some interesting reading. I mean, just talking about some of the DLs and stuff like that. You look down the list of what have I got here, the top 30, and there's a few names on there that you and I have mentioned, but you're going down the list and you've got players up there well up on pressures, likes of Chris Jones, Kenny Clark, Jeffrey Simmons at the Titans, players that aren't necessarily going to be, the top of everyone's fit by a long stretch. But
exactly. And it's also the thing is like when you've got a defensive player of the year in Aaron Donald, he needs to figure up there, whether he gets sacks or whether he doesn't really, you know what I mean? Because the fact of the matter is there's still pressure there. And he's still causing absolute havoc. So we need to recognise it, and we've got to find some way of doing that. We don't want him and other linemen that are doing such a good job in their team not getting recognised, because it just falsifies it for trying to make it. I know we can't make it that realistic, but this is the way we're going with, and so far so good. We obviously we love our own scoring, and as we've looked at it closer, it does seem to fit better than it did last year because, like I said, a few of those players dropped off.
Yeah. Okay. And like we said, Max Crosby, top of the list, but he's one of our favourites at the moment. So moving on to the next question. Why are we seeing so many edge rushers going off the board early in current drafts? So I've actually sort of had a quick look at this. We'll get sort of Nath's 2 cents worth on it as well. So I suppose, some of it boils down to, and this is, just my take on it, but you're going to have people in the draft that are always going to be attracted to the big name players, the big sack numbers. And obviously, again, it's sometimes roster dependent. But if you've got 3 DL spots on your roster, then, by all means, take a Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa. They're going to go off early. The question is, I suppose, what do you do after that? And just going back to our draft, which, we'll come into in a little while. Well, I mean, obviously, Garrett came off at 5'8", Bosa at 6'3". Okay, hardly surprising. Then we were looking at 34 picks sort of coming and going before our man Max Crosby went off, sort of followed by the likes of Brian Burns, then Daniil Hunter, Clay Hendrickson in the next round. Then sort of 20-odd linebackers came off the board before the remaining edges were picked up sort of fairly late on. Now, I am factoring in, as Nathan and I discussed, bear in mind that with our mock draft, you had 12 players drafted that were arguably a little bit more IDP savvy. So the draft we're looking at is probably a little more atypical than some you'll see. But what we found is my take on it is somewhat reinforcing the importance of the linebackers in an IDP draft. So just as a bit of further illustration, I went back to the stats from last season, singled out the edge rushers and the linebackers to try and once again highlight where the IDP value is coming from. I've skipped over the top 4 players because, as I said to Nathan, I was trying to look at a more, that sort of, get a bit more of an even spread on it. So just looking down the list, so going from the 5th to the 25th edge, you're looking at a points difference of 69 points. Turn it over to the linebackers, it's 62. So, yeah, okay, on the face of it, only 7 points. Then I had a quick look at the range of points across the same positions. Now, the edge players, you're looking at it going from 199 down to 130. At linebacker, you've got to go all the way down to TJ Edwards, who was 25th on the list, but he's still picking up over 200 points. So I suppose, if you're looking to nab, if you can nab a top edge at the right time, somewhere around sort of, around 5 or 6, then that would be sort of typical in most drafts, happy days. I mean, if you miss out on it, I wouldn't panic. I'd then be looking to, if you do miss out because of, your draft position, we'll touch on that in a minute. I'd be looking to sort of secure linebackers, secure those tackle numbers for the coming season. Then you can maybe start fishing around for some hidden values going back to the edges. I mean, looking at our mock draft briefly, I noticed Ngakwe and our draft came off at 17.3. Great value, I reckon, for a late edge pickup. 10 sacks last season, had better QB hit numbers than most players outside of those sort of top 3 or 4 that I've missed out. But that is kind of my take on it. I know Nath and I've sort of discussed this, and there is an argument that you are a bit spoilt for choice with the linebackers. So I am a little bit torn with it in so much as I know your take on it is slightly different.
Yeah, I think really it's about these premium players. Like, so from the linebacker core, then you're going to be looking at the snap count and these kind of linebacker, what you call the lead linebacker. I mentioned it last week. That guy there, there's like I spoke last week. There's probably 24, and then you're into the other guys, the other linebacker, the more coverage guy, or the guy that is playing seriously less snaps than the main linebacker. And then you've got all the scheme fits as well. So, I mean, I think the problem is you've only got, say, 24 top linebackers that you would call that you would want. And obviously, if you've got 4 spots to fill or 3 spots to fill, then you know that you've got you're definitely going to want two of those in that top. You know what I mean? You're going to want to be, because that puts you in that ahead of those other guys. But again, with the DLs, it's similar. There's not that many of that top tier ones. I mean, we've spoke about it before. There are teams that just don't have one at the moment. The Lions, there's not an edge rusher that you'd want there. The Texans, Greenard probably, but he would be at the bottom of that pile. But that's one. There isn't another. Falcons, they don't seem to have anybody. The Jets have got possibly two, but again, they're down the bottom of the pack. But you see what I mean? It is slim pickings for those kind of top guys. So that's why you're seeing people like go for those. But for me, if you don't get a Myles Garrett, a Nick Bosa, and Aaron Donald, then you might then look at the top linebackers, or vice versa, depending on which way you're going to go. If you want TJ Watt, you're going to go in early doors and try and get him. Then, yeah, there's some good value later on, Dan, but you are sort of like throwing a dart. I mean, this rookie draft this year, we know that there's so many teams that are after edge rushers. So we're going to expect to see quite a few fly off, which tells you that there's gaps to fill on these rosters. So there isn't two edge rushers per side. So you can't, there's not a full quota. And if you've got 3 spots to fill in a 12-team league, well, you are going to be scratching around. So there is going to be, that's why the push is. DBs, it's a bit different because you've got the corners as well. So you have got a few more spots to fill. And also, I think there's a few more that you can kind of take a punt on. Yeah. And also, when you talk about points differential, it's not as much in that DB area, between DB 5 and DB 12 or whatever, you know what I mean? So that the points are not going to make the difference when if you think of a TJ Watt, I mean, he's head and shoulders above some of the other scorers. Yeah. And so is Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa, and the gap is particularly quite big. So yeah, that's why the mad rushes are. That's why you see them go off the board. It's just how it is.
And yeah, I do sort of take that on board as well. I suppose the point I was trying to illustrate was simply that if you're in a draft and you're fairly new to it and you see all these and you're at in a position in the draft where you see those sort of premium players going off, you can make up the grounds elsewhere because of the spread of points on the line. Yeah. So you don't. The point is, anyone new to it, if you see that happen in a draft and you've missed out, don't panic. There is value. So
it's value in when you look at your roster setup, when you look at how many positions you've got to fill. So say it is 3 linebackers, 3 DL, 3 DBs, just to make it easy for the conversation. Then it is like you've got to make that decision. Do you want a linebacker 1? Do you want one of the top tier linebackers, 1 to 12? Do you want one of those guys? If the answer is I want 2 of them, okay, well then you need to be going linebacker heavy early doors because the run will start. And depending on where you are in the draft, So I mean, there is that, but that's a strategy play more than anything. Yeah. But yeah, the DLs. The fact of the matter is that there's some absolutely core players that anybody would love to have them. A Nick Bosa. Yeah, give me him every day. Lovely.
Happy days. Right. Next on the list. Someone's asked, do you do your own rankings and how do I do them basically?
Yeah, I do my own rankings. I don't publish them or anything like that. I've got a spreadsheet which I do share with our guys. And I can fire it out to anybody that wants it. But really getting into rankings, you can. One of the best ways, in a way, and it sounds awful, but it's how it works with most people, is use somebody else's and then move it around to suit what you think. And then the next stage of that is put in some reasoning behind why you think that. And then maybe some stats behind why you think that to prove it. And that's the kind of thing. And then you start getting into the real depths of it. And then when you're a real stat guy, you can go absolutely crazy with it and look at all sorts of metrics to try and get, and then you're into the realms of, wherever you want to be, you can be. But actually rankings are really easy to sort of start off doing. And you kind of automatically do them without knowing it, because if you set a queue on Sleeper of players that you want as the draft's running, you're automatically ranking players, because you're putting them in a line and you're saying, oh, actually, I want Deion Jones above Cole Holcomb, or I don't like him, Jerome Baker, I like him, or whatever. You're putting them in a list and then you're putting them down. And then if they're on the board, you're going to take the top one. So you automatically do it. It's just, you probably just don't do it on paper. But it's exactly that. You're just putting down who you think's better than the next man up, and why you think that is. And then that's it. That's it. So, it's not that hard. People make a real song and dance over the ranking side of things. I think it's, when you get in the depth side of things, but actually putting together a set of rankings is absolutely fine. Just do it. You can do it off the back of Sleeper really quickly.
Yeah, and as we said, before we came on, it just boils down to that. It really does. It is just a case of how far you want to take it, how seriously you're taking it.
Rankings are also mainly to do with whether you see a player being an arrow up this year or an arrow down, whether you see them regressing or not. There's there's lots of reasons why you might think that. I'm going to talk about one in a bit, which is one about Cole Holcomb, who I've got as somebody that could regress this year, and that's down to the fact that Jamin Davis is around, and that worries me slightly. Might not worry others, absolutely fine, but my choice is I'm a little bit worried about it. So I'm not going to take Holcomb maybe over Deion Jones at this time. We talked about earlier, Bren, where we see at the moment, Deion Jones doesn't have a threat to his position. He's in his last year of his contract. He's at the Falcons. They're going to be on the field. The defense is going to be on the field a lot, you would think. He's lost. Olukon's gone. There's a lot of pluses to say, actually, there's a big chance that Deion Jones does look good this year. Holcomb, except. So, that's the kind of thing. But then that sets your rankings and you suddenly go, actually, I'm going to put Deion Jones above him. When I don't know where Holcomb was, and Deion Jones, I haven't got the stats in front of me. But, they might have not finished 2021 that way, but you've just ranked them. There you go, done.
Yeah. Not that difficult. So going back to the drafting side of things, so got a couple of questions on that. First one is, and they tie in quite nicely. So do you go into the draft with a predetermined strategy, or should you go into the draft with a predetermined strategy? So, by that, I suppose, the person behind that question, and it sort of begs the question, how rigidly should you stick to that, I suppose, given that I suppose that sort of question kind of boils down to, are you prioritizing position over individual players?
Anybody that would ask me now, I would say to them straight away, just go and do a few mock drafts, and then your mind will be made up yourself, really, about how much you want to plan it. I'm sure everybody's different when it comes to how much they're sticking to their plan and how many people are actually going against it. Me, I start off with a plan. Do I finish one? Sometimes I go. I've always got a set plan. Anybody that plays fantasy football quite a bit will have a plan. And that's just normal. It's nothing to do with it. Defensively, like we spoke about, it depends on obviously your scoring formats. But if you can put in the scoring format and have a look at last year's scores, you should be able to see. That should help you with your decision about how you're planning out your draft. There's little pointers like that. If you haven't done any homework whatsoever, you can still look at something quite quickly that might be able to help you. And that is looking at the previous stats of the year. And you should be able to do that by selecting leaders, selecting season 2021, and then just look at the stats and see who ranked. If you suddenly got a massive, stupid high linebacker score in, well, there you go. Massively high, then it's really, really, really tackle heavy. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay, well, that leads nicely into a follow-up question, which is, to what degree are the majority of draft picks or are the majority of draft picks too reactionary? So, are too many players overly concerned about what other players are doing around them, reacting simply because they see a run of players in a particular position going off the board, rather than sort of taking a chance to maybe look for some hidden value? Should you have a bit more faith when it's one of those, really, isn't it?
You see it all the time, the reaction side of things. And the people that play fantasy quite a lot rely on it in a way, because we you can see people make a knee-jerk reaction to something. But yeah, you shouldn't. If you're gonna be good, you're gonna be you got to stick to your guns and stick to what you want to do, and do not be too knee-jerk. There are some formats. Superflex is a real interesting one when it comes to that kind of things, especially on obviously the QB runs, because obviously with 2 QBs, there's really not that many to go around of the top ones. So it does really start a runoff on there. But again, you get some guys that just go completely against the grain and just don't bother taking any. But that's what they do.
Yeah, and I think you've got to be prepared to be, and it goes back to the previous question. If you've got a predetermined strategy, don't be afraid to stick to it. I mean, classically, how many drafts do you see where all of a sudden a run of wide receivers, start, and you see everyone following suit? Well, just take a breath, step back, and go, well, all right. Actually, there's loads of them to go around. There's always value in wide receivers later on. So you might be looking at that in rounds 4 or 5 and go, you know what, I'm going to take the top I'm going to start taking the LBs off the board.
Yeah, especially in Dynasty. I mean, this draft that we did. Yeah, in this draft we did, it's redraft, so it's slightly different from that side of things, but the core values are still there. But in Dynasty, you must, if you're in it for the long haul, you should be doing some work on players' values and sticking with your plan, because as soon as you don't, well, that then you might this is the year-on-year thing. You do your homework based on the fact that you see some, so you've got some plan. You can't just go into it without one. If you do, then you're probably not going to do very well.
No, that's a good point, actually. I mean, we're basing a lot of the responses to this because it ties in with the draft we've done, which is, it is a redraft. So, different angles to come at that sort of school of thought. But I suppose, in a nutshell, it's every draft is going to be. It's going to be a mixture of the two.
Yeah,
it can't be anything else, really.
In IDP, you see it with you do see it with obviously exactly the same as offense, but just on the positional runs, it's the kickoff. It's the kickoff of the IDPs usually. That's what creates the mad rush. It's the kickoff. So it's like the first one to take that linebacker, the first one to take the DL, the first one to take the DB. Not so much on the DB front, because people, will take a heavy punt on a Derwin James if they like them. Mm-hmm. They do tend to go for the guys that they like a little bit more on DB early. I just find that a lot, rather than not looking at the points. I think that happens quite a bit. You see Jamal Adams, Jeremy Chin, and Derwin James coming off particularly quite early. And I don't know whether there's enough for me year in, year out to value that. Again, it depends on your scoring. I'm talking about ours, really. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay. And just rounding off sort of the questions for this week. And again, this sort of links the last 2 questions together very nicely. Anyone would think I'd planned this ahead of time. So in a typical 12-man league, as we based our draft on, what advice would we give based on draft position? Now, this is something Nath sort of touched on sort of last week. But so I suppose it's, if I'm picking up at sort of 1 or 12, like we touched on last week, I think you're going to be more inclined to stick to that strategy because, as you mentioned, you've got that gap. You're not going to see, you've got the 2 on the snake, but then it's you don't maybe, as opposed to if you're picking at 5, 6, or 7.
Yeah, the middle positions are definitely different. Just on your general. That's how I work. But again, that's me personally. It is a different stance for me if I'm picking 5, 6, 7 because I will look at what people are doing to try and get that value a little bit more than if I'm definitely at the start, because obviously you're starting the run, so you get the chance to set the pace in a way. So you're going to stick to your guy. Your first guy is going to be your guy. You know what I mean? He's probably going to be, but as soon as you get to 5, your guy who you wanted may have already gone. So then you think to yourself, okay, do I try and shift and change the narrative, or do I, you know what I mean? And you can influence a little bit in the middle of the draft sometimes. But again, that's a personal point of view. Really, you shouldn't change too much, in my opinion. You should still try and stick to what you've got. Obviously, at the end of the line is quite an interesting one. I find that sometimes I've been obviously picking at 11 or 12, and you can quite quickly flip it to the fact that you feel you're picking first, because if you can get that value early on that second pick, obviously, you know, because of the snake, then suddenly you seem to feel like that you're in control. But when you're in that 5, 6, 7, I never feel in complete control in the 5, 6, 7 middle of the draft. People like it though. A lot of people do like to be middle of the draft because they like to watch the board. Like I said, I like to have my plan and try and stick to it. So I would prefer to be either end, really.
Okay, that's right. That's it. That wraps up sort of the Q&A bit of this week's pod.
Coolly. Right, so let's go on to our IDP mock draft. So this is week 2. So we're concentrating on teams 5 to 8 this week. So just going over what you guys might not know if you're watching this for your first time, or the settings. So the settings on our league, it is fantasy and frame scoring. It's half PPR, it's super flex, and the positional settings are 2 QB, 3 running backs, 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 3 DL, 3 linebacker, and 3 DB. That is the setup that we went for, to try and give ourselves as much as a balance as we possibly can. I know I mentioned that I don't like the word balanced whatever, because it's linked to balanced scoring, and I don't believe it can be done. I'm one of those people that don't. But this is as good as it kind of can be on Sleeper. So that's my view anyway. But that is our roster setup for this. What else have I got to make sure that you guys know before we flick up the picture? I think that's it. So we've done that mock draft. As I said, we're concentrating on teams 5 to 8, but we will refer to some of the other players and when they went off the board, just so you guys can understand where players sort of went and not just see these 4 teams. So let's get those 4 teams up right now. So this is teams. There they are. That is teams 5 to 8, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Yes. So, right, let's break it down then. So, Bren, do you want to kick us off with some of the stuff on Team 5? What have you got?
Yeah, so we looked at these 4 teams. We've both got different teams that we sort of prefer. We couldn't agree on that, and that's the whole part and parcel of this. It's why we're doing the Q&A. It's why we've got slightly different takes on some of the questions we touched on earlier. I think generally we're on the same page, but I mean, looking down the list. And I'm skipping over the offensive players. I am sort of really looking at sort of what they've picked and where in terms of IDP, because that's what we're here for. So I'm leaning towards sort of team 5, basically. Okay. They've taken sort of Aaron Donald nice and early. I think it's a decent sort of spread of IDP players. I think they've taken some good value late on. The one I wanted to touch on, or to kick things off with, was a bit of sort of the forgotten man. We both, I think, forgot about him going into this draft anyway. Yeah. So Blake Martinez, so Team 5 taking him in round 6.
Are you a fan? Are you a fan of Blake Martinez?
I am actually, because I think he's gone off. There wouldn't be any argument for taking him any earlier. I think whoever's picked him is probably looking at what's gone on previously. I think there will be. I mean, as we all know, he didn't play last season really. after following the ACL injury in week 3. I'm inclined to agree with probably what this person's thinking. I've gone back over the tackle numbers, which is, something we like to refer back to. And I think anyone taking Blake is looking at those numbers over the last sort of 3 or 4 seasons. They are very consistent. So the last 4 years, tackle numbers read as 151, 155, 144, 142.
Now, he was the 8th linebacker off the board. I've got him here.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. And my personal take in it, Nath might not agree. Looking at those numbers, assuming he's going into this season fit, there's a couple of reasons. If he plays like that, he's going to be up there. You can throw a few sacks and a few picks in for good measure over previous seasons, but the tackle numbers for his position, as always, are going to be key. He's 28, which is sort of prime age for a linebacker, one would argue. The reason I have highlighted him, and this ties in with something, I've gone back and looked at the Giants' sort of defensive setup. Now, last season with Martinez injury, they had Tate Crowder in. Now, he finished at linebacker 25. Bear in mind, the Giants seldom play with 2 linebackers. They tend to set up typically, and I don't see any reason why they'll do anything too much different this year. They tend to set up with a single lead linebacker and 3 safeties. Now that means, Martinez is just going to walk straight back into that lead linebacker position for me.
Are you concerned the fact that obviously they've shipped Logan Ryan and they've shipped Peppers has gone as well, so they haven't got as many of the safeties. But I expect them to take a safety. I think they will take a safety in this draft. They might even take they probably should take a linebacker, to be honest. But again, I don't know. Actually, they've got quite a few needs. They've got a need at edge as well. But Martinez.
Yeah, I would still, because he's and you said maybe he's not the most sort of mobile of linebackers, but
he's not.
He's okay. He's not. But
like moving a wardrobe. But
when a wardrobe hits you're going to stay hit, basically.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So we have got we've got slightly sort of different views on that.
It's not, but not from an IDP perspective. I think the thing is, at the end of the day, like you said, if
whether you like the player or not, I think that's
If Martinez is on the field, then happy days. I don't know. I worry the injury and the fact that his mobility is always been one of question, and the fact that you've got more mobile quarterbacks and more maybe elusive running backs, depending on how it all pans out. But I just worry for those. I worry for those linebackers that are not as mobile. But saying that, the points speak for themselves. When, like I said, even Tate Crowder's not particularly great, and it's like he's still racked up some points. So whoever has got that job and whoever's on the field for the Giants, they do get some points, and that's the fact. That's just a fact. So it's Martinez, isn't it?
As I say, I mean, I'm looking at it from. I'm taking this purely, or I'm making a case for Martinez based on a redraft. Redraft league. The injury almost certainly is, going to be a factor sort of longer term. But, if those tackle numbers are there and he's going into the season as arguably the lead linebacker, then, I'd still put him inside, top 8 to 10. Maybe 6 to 8 is a bit rich, but certainly in the top 10 linebackers for me.
I kind of agree with you when you look at, looking at if you're taking off, if Parsons is one of those, Parsons, Leonard, Brooks, White, Roquan, obviously, Bobby Wagner, Kendricks. I wouldn't put him above any of them. No. But then you're looking, it's probably about right, because then you're into the Olicon, Deion Jones, Mosley, Warner, Devondre Campbell, those kind of players. So I get it. 8th. Okay, fine.
It's as I mentioned during the Q&A session, the fact that this draft's been done by people that are quite well sort of IDP. In other drafts you'd see that. You maybe wouldn't see it being quite as structured as maybe some of these. I mean, a lot of these players, as we go through it, you'd be hard. I've looked at the draft as a whole and gone, actually, I'd be hard pressed to move too many of them around.
Yeah, I agree.
They have kind of gone where you would expect them to. There are definitely some that you can make a case for.
Yeah, Logan Wilson's particularly kind of, he's a funny one, Logan Wilson. I mean, I really do rate him, but the issue is for me is that I don't know how high his ceiling can be, because he seems to have been playing a lot when he's on the field. It's a lot of snaps. He is the guy, and yet we're not seeing him break into those top spots. So is his ceiling already been reached? I don't know. I quite like Jerome Baker down there. That's a good pickup. We had a good chat about Jerome Baker earlier. He's an interesting one going into his final year of his contract as well. I don't know. He's just one of these players, Jerome Baker, that plays. He's the lead linebacker. He plays a lot of snaps. He's the 3-down guy. He's just, and he's somebody who just doesn't quite break into that next tier. Could he break into those? Is he going to be one of these players that we talked about like last week that becomes a real top linebacker a little bit later on in his career, once he starts to really be a bit more of a master of his trade? Maybe he's one of those. I don't know, but he's certainly, he's a good player for me. And
I mean, it's. We did have a good chat about it before. Okay, I'm a little bit biased on Jerome because he's one of ours, but I think where he's gone off in that draft, like you say, based on the fact that a lot of people don't seem to be overly high on him, is probably about right. I mean,
he's gone off. It's gone off after Schobert and before Perriman. Well, Schobert does he have a team at the moment? He's been released by Pittsburgh. Yeah. So okay, and Perriman's. I mean, it's like a one season. What he came out of nowhere. Nobody predicted what happened to Denzel Perriman last year, and it's like, I mean, we're expecting. Everybody's quoting the fact that we're expecting him to regress, and I do as well. So I think Jerome Baker is particularly quite good value.
Yeah, you could make a case for him maybe going a round or two earlier looking at this. I mean, he's gone off sort of after Zavian Collins, Simmons at Arizona, Robert Quinn at Chicago.
Yeah, but Quinn's at edge rusher, so Quinn's.
Well,
but yeah, there's. Yeah, I quite like Jerome Baker. Let's flip it over to the DLs of that team as well. So the DL now looking at these guys, obviously Aaron Donald, he went all in early doors on it, which is fine, no problems with that because Aaron Donald's Aaron Donald. Then he waited a bit, and then he gets DeForest Buckner, who was 28th overall in DL last year, who I think is potentially in for an arrow up this season. Just based on, I just think the defense at the Colts could be better. Could be better. I think they might have just a better season. All in all, Marcus Golden, he finished 20. I think Marcus Golden's really good value. I like Marcus Golden because I feel that there's a chance there with Chandler Jones gone. Even if they do pick somebody up, are they going to throw him in? I don't know. Marcus Golden is just one of those players that. Yeah, I'd rather have a punt on him. If he does the same again, I mean, he finished 20th overall in the DL category. So if you've got him as your DL2, this guy's got him as a DL3. So, he's got 20th, 28th, and 2nd last year. He's done particularly well in DL slots. I mean, basing it off last year, he's done really well.
Yeah, I mean, I know you sort of. Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned sort of Marcus Golden in a couple of pods back as sort of one to a bit of a sleeper.
It would be sleeper. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of his.
No, but I mean, if you look at where he's taken him, in the 17th round, you think, well, yeah.
And I just look at them as well. I look at Arizona from I mean, okay, they've got one edge rusher in JJ Watt. Now, I'm not sure I fit JJ Watt is. Can he go out all season and do it? I mean, I just feel that Marcus Golden there's something there that tells me that he is arrow up this year. But again, a lot of people may have differing opinions. It's just at this moment in time, I just feel that he's a decent pickup.
Yeah, I think I picked Team 5 because I like the balance. I like some pickups. I do. Player we've already mentioned. We touched on before. Going back over to Forrest Buckner again. Yeah, we expect the Colts to be better this season. I know they get a bit of criticism for they're quite a sort of staid defensive setup, a little bit boring, but they were sort of defense sort of 12 last season. He's got a good snap count, 7th best in sort of DLs overall last season, 7 sacks, 18 QB hits, a good sort of, he's got a good number of QB pressures there, 49. Now, he scored reasonably well last season. You take, I don't know, sort of 3 or 4 of those pressures, convert them into sacks. He's into double figures for the season. But I think the thing with Buckner is where he's taken him, he's spot on for me. In 15th round. I think what he scored last season with the some of the moves the Colts have made, he's going to be. He won't score less than that. I don't think.
No, I don't neither. I think
you kind of know what you're getting, and anything on that, is giving.
I haven't got the conversion rates in front of me, but I'd be interested to see those. Apologies for that. But that would be interesting to see. But I wouldn't think they were particularly good last year from Buckner. Just getting that, or so that gives you the chance that he is going to get better this year. I mean, if he had 100% conversion rate, then the issue is there that he's got nowhere to go. But I really don't. I don't think it was particularly great. But going on to the DBs of that Team 5 as well. I don't dislike it. Jeremy Chin is a good pickup there. He's probably one of the early ones to come off. And then he waits a bit, picks up Simmons. Simmons is always a safe bet, Justin Simmons. Just one of those players that is just safe. So, and then Justin Reed's he's a bit of a punt, but I tell you what, it's worth a punt there because obviously new team. It could work particularly well. I mean, there's a ball hawk spot there. That's the key as well. With the honey badger gone. I think Sorensen gone.
Yeah,
I think it can. I think that could be a really good pickup there. So that's an outside shot. So Team 5, like Team 5. Wasn't my top one. So let's go on to Team 6 then and see what they've done differently. Let's see what they did. Let me have a look. If I move, I'll scroll it up and then back down.
Well, I mean, they've done what we touched on before. They were the ones to go in big on Derwin James.
They were. Which is fine. I like
Derwin. A little while, really. But...
Yeah. Did they get a second? Did they actually? No, this is one of the teams. So we asked everybody to follow the thing and make sure that they picked up 3 of each. This guy didn't. No. Did he? He's missing a DB.
Yeah, that was what I was looking at before.
Okay, so he's missing the DB. So he's got one position multiple. He's got 4 wide receivers there. Okay, he's greedy at wide receiver, but but that's okay because I tell you what, DB wise, he's got Derwin James. He's gone and picked up Jordan White and late on. I like Jordan White.
I mean, this is one I highlighted and discussed with Nathan, and we're both very much in agreement. I mean, to take Whitehead following the move to the Jets, in the last round for me is great. I mean, he's played second fiddle, at Tampa to Winfield. He's got a new lease of life at the Jets for me. Obviously Marcus May sort of moved on. He finished sort of DB 51 last year. But like I said, I think the move will be key for Jordan Whitehead. I mean, the only person, you look at what else was there at the Jets and who we got? Well, Ashton Davis finished up, as a DB 100. Like I said, Whitehead was miles above that. He was significantly higher than that. And he wasn't he wasn't even the first choice guy at the Bucks, really, when you factor in Winfield. So, I feel that
and also that if you look at the Marcus May stuff and look at the sort of snap count that he had, and the fact that spot's there to be filled now, you've got to look at that and say that just looks a really good pickup for me. I like Whitehead as well. He knows his trade. He's one of these guys. He's been on a a Super Bowl winning team as well, which is absolutely going to be absolutely vital for the Jets, who are trying to obviously pick themselves up off the floor for being the worst defensive team in the league last year. And that's the kind of people that they do need to sign. I mean, I think that's a great signing for them. And I think that Jordan Whitehead potentially could be a real good sleeper. However, there's a lot of people that think that as well. So it's not the one that's underneath the radar, put it that way. So
not in this draft, clearly. But...
Well, no, it's surprising in this draft that he did. I don't know. Maybe they just missed him, really. That he wasn't. See Marcus May being taken before him, and Chuck Clark, Adrian Phillips. These are all good players. This is the thing with the DBs. I feel that it's I think there's quite a bit of depth there of actually reasonably good talent. So yeah, I understand why they're leaving it late. So okay, so that's the DB side of things on that one. Linebackers, they've got CJ Mosley, Tremaine Edmonds, and Troy Reader. I don't think that's particularly that strong. I always worry about Tremaine Edmonds. I like him. He is the class as the lead linebacker, but wow, is it split? It seems to be split quite a bit with like Matt Milano and players like that. That kind of worry me a little bit with Tremaine Edmonds. Some people seem to be quite willing to spend to draft him quite high, and I don't really see why. I like him as a linebacker, and I think he's actually got some potential. And in that defense, which was the best defense in the league last year, he is good. But as they are as a unit, as a fantasy asset, I worry sometimes about the value that's paid for Tremaine Edmonds. CJ Mosley, I think at the moment he's got no competition there. He's definitely the guy next year. I've picked up CJ Mosley in quite a few drafts. I'm in the IDP guys one at the moment, and that I've got CJ Mosley again. He fell to me, and he just racks up the tackles. And Troy Reader's a real interesting one now because he signed back with the Chargers, but there's a gap there. There's a gap there for him, and he could be. Yeah, it's a strange signing though, but it's like they've kind of gone backwards and sideways. They've let Cesaro White was really good last year. He's gone, and now they've put Reader back in. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's the linebackers. What we got on DLs, Bren. They're better at DL.
Yeah, I think so.
JJ Watt's better.
Yeah, but I mean, outside of that, Mack and sort of Reddick.
Yeah, actually, they're not great at all. Actually, as in fantasy wise, Khalil Mack's never particular. I mean, obviously, new team, new scheme. Let's see how that pans out. But there's nothing for me to say that Khalil Mack's really going to break into the top scores.
I think the pick of the bunch for me would be Reddick. Again, he's at a new team.
Lots of people lots of people are saying about Reddick not being I'm not a massive fan of him, but fantasy wise, his points speak for himself. And the problem is he's been at multiple teams and scored well at all of them, and he's finished, in the top DL slots. He's up there year in, year out. And now the Eagles have gone and I don't know. Yeah, I like Reddick. I can happily play him.
His tackle numbers are decent over the last 2 seasons. Sack numbers, 11 last season, 12.5 the season before.
We just don't you can't get too excited about him. He's just one of those players that you just think.
The Eagles now, so we have this jaundiced view on what the Eagles do defensively. So we're there to be proven wrong by all means. But
like you said though, you can't.
Like you said, I think if I was taking one, it would definitely be Reddick. Based on fantasy performances, good sack numbers over the last couple of years.
Where did he get how high up did he pick JJ Watt? Oh my gosh. He took JJ Watt before Buckner. Don't like that.
No.
Don't like that. I mean, I love JJ Watt. He's been an absolute hero, an absolute IDP hero in historic terms and stuff. And I mean, I remember the guy caught touchdowns for God's sake. So I mean, back in the day that was, but like now, I worry about
last year.
I worry about how much. Yeah, I worry about how much on the field time he can.
Yeah,
he can do.
33 now. Yeah, injuries last season. Yeah, I think that's I think even in redraft, that's a bit of a gamble.
It's a bit.
I don't. I mean, if it, hey,
I'd go back now. I'd go back now.
I'll be impressed. But I think, to be honest, if he plays double figures, I'd say you've done well. But for me, that's not good enough.
No, normally not sure I like that team. I think they gambled early on Derwin James and may have paid a bit of a price on that front.
Yeah.
On some of those players.
But the weakest of the four for me.
Yeah. And also, he's only got 2 out of the 3 TBs, so serves him right. Serves him right.
Who was that?
I don't know. I'll have a look. I'll have a look back. It certainly wasn't mine. So let's go. Team 7. Okay, so this isn't somebody else that would have sort of like set the roll off. They've gone in with Devon White early doors as well. So happy to pay the money. That's cool. Pay the money. Pay the capital as an early pick for a linebacker. And I got no problem with Devon White. I mean, the problem is with Devon White is obviously a couple of years ago it was highlighted by his sack numbers that really did sort of like skew the figures a bit to put Devon White into that real top mix. I think he's a great linebacker to have in that top tier, but yeah, he wouldn't be my pick of the bunch from that point of view. But again, that's a personal opinion because some people absolutely love him and go for it. Other linebackers, Schobert and Perriman, is that right? They went on the same team.
Yeah.
No way. Okay. Yeah. Oh my world. Yeah. Okay. Don't like this one. Don't like Team 7. Don't like Team 7. DBs are all right. Robert Quinn's sack numbers last year was brilliant, but you would expect him to sort of regress slightly. Von Miller, Joey Bosa. Okay, so the two DLs, Joey Bosa and Von Miller, obviously, I think they're both very different seasons that these guys could have. Yeah. So obviously, Von Miller at the Bills, that's going to be really interesting to see because obviously the Bills rotate their edge rushers quite a bit, but I don't think they will potentially, because again, Von's one of these big players, so you'd expect Von Miller to demand to be on that field as much as possible. So excited to see how that pans out. And obviously Joey Bosa has now got Khalil Mack opposite him. So that might change things a little bit for Joey because Joey's definitely been the man to keep an eye on. If you're playing the Chargers, you've got to try your best to try and stop Joey Bosa from running straight through the middle of you and getting that pressure on the quarterback. Now with Khalil Mack on the other side, there's a different mindset maybe to teams that come up against them, which might benefit Joey Bosa. I see Joey Bosa slightly arrow up. For me, that's just a personal opinion. But there we go. What are your thoughts on this one, Brad?
Well, I don't like the Von Miller pick, actually.
Don't you?
Well, I don't like I like the player, but he probably will stand.
Where did he go off? I'm trying to see where he
went off round 11, but
it's quite early.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider, and I've just done a brief comparison, not in these 4 things, but again, we said we'd refer back to, the draft as a whole.
Yeah.
Now, I'm looking at Von Miller going off at, round 11, and looking at a few of the stats. I mean,
it's quite early.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have taken someone like a Shaq Barrett if I was looking for, and just looking at stats, Von Miller, okay, at 32, he's not necessarily over the hill yet. Finished DL sort of 25, 9.5 sacks, 183.5 points. And then I sort of flipped it over and looked at sort of Shaq Barrett, who's someone I've always liked, finished, a few years younger, finished DL 12. Sack numbers are near as damn it the same, finished over 200 points. The interesting thing, both played the same number of games, both missed a couple last season, finished on, I think, 15 games. But I've gone back to looking at something we touched on before. I've pulled up the pressure, the QB pressure numbers. Shaq Barrett's much higher at the list. Higher at the list. He's in the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's 6th.
Yeah.
Looking at the QB pressures. Von Miller's down sort of mid-20s.
Yeah.
So that for me, it's a little thing. There is, if you look at the stats from last season, there isn't a huge amount to split them. You're only talking about 20 points, differential.
It is a gamble. I mean, it's a gamble on Von Miller because obviously he is going to the Bills, and it is.
Whereas, I mean, you take Shaq Barrett, who is, he's settled in Tampa.
Yeah, they're re-signing pretty much everybody that they need to seem to re-sign at the moment. So you expect that line to be good.
Yeah, so I'd expect Shaq to be sort of there or thereabouts. Von Miller, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe you would see a bit of a downturn. And for me, if I was, if someone said, right, we'll take a deal, then yeah, I'd have looked at Barrett over Von Miller personally. But
It's a good shout, and I tell you, that's the thing. This is the thing when we're talking about rankings and people's opinions and stuff like that. There's not really a wrong opinion to have if it's your opinion and you can put it forward, because there is some valid points there. It is, and especially when players move, I mean, it's really difficult to see it to work out what they're going to do. It's like Wagner moving as well to the Rams. It's one of those things. Is he going to demand the same snap count as he had at the Seahawks? And it's very similar with Von Miller. Is it going to be the same? Because he's going into a scheme where they do rotate them. I mean, they really do rotate it, the Bills. And will they change it for him, or will they just, use him in that element of surprise a bit more, where they're actually going to monitor his snap count and they're going to try and keep him fresh and keep him for that one big rush. You know what I mean? At vital times. So, yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to call it, but there's definitely opinions plus and minus for Von Miller this year. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. So team 8, let's go move on to them. Now, this was a team that I liked. This is the one that I have picked as my favorite team in this, and I just think that they've got some real value. The ones for me where they really have some value is, I mean, I don't know what their offense is like, but they've certainly have gone quite defense heavy early doors. They've gone Garrett. They've managed to get Deion Jones, who we'll touch on in a minute. Brian Burns, another one, really an arrow up guy this year, potentially. Jock. Koromoa is really, I think he's somebody who could have the job. And they've gone Holcomb. They've got Holcomb really late. Now, if that works, that's brilliant. I'll talk about it quickly on Cole Holcomb. So I think Holcomb is slightly at risk of regression this year. Be interested to see how other people value him and whether they think that he could be. Because the worry for me is Jamin Davis. I just feel that there is... I always worry a bit with the second year. Like talking about Koromoa. Koromoa is somebody who could really have the job there at Cleveland this year. Now, if Jamin Davis, if the view of the Washington franchise is different with Jamin Davis, then maybe he is the long-term solution, and maybe they just just hold him back for a year, and that is a worry for Holcomb. But Holcomb's, don't know. Holcomb's figures speak for himself. I mean, he's right up there, and to get him that late in the draft, I think potentially could be absolute steal. I think they've done well. Cesaro Smith, I like that pickup as well. Obviously I do from the Vikings point of view. I know you mentioned Cesaro Smith. You got anything to say on him, or were you going to pass?
Oh, it was the only sort of question I sort of threw at you before we came on was, it's what's it, 47 million sort of sign in, 29 the injury, but he only played one game last season. But like you say, I mean, he's from where he's gone off the board, and assuming he's fit, which you have. Yeah,
I go back to I mentioned it to you. I mean, I go back to the Everson Griffin thing with him, is the fact that when it's gone back a few years ago now. When we had Hunter and Griffin there, I mean, they both scored well, and they both just caused absolute havoc for some teams. And that was how we sort of based our whole organization on the fact that we had such a good pass rush and in a way such a good defense, really. And obviously we've gone off the rails. Now with Cesaro Smith back in, it really does strengthen it back up again. If he's fit, obviously the question marks is going to be around that fitness. We all know what he can do. And it all could end horribly bad for us. If Hunter's injured and he's injured, I mean, it's the biggest waste of money going on. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm confident.
Having said all that, here I was sort of 20 minutes ago making a case for a wardrobe coming back off a ripped ACL. So
exactly. Yeah, I mean, you've got to go. The thing is look, any of these guys can get injured at virtually any time. So I mean,
can't base it on that.
Defense, yeah, exactly. You've got to say that they don't. So from our side of things, Cesaro Smith's going to be back. He's going to be 100%, and that's good value picking him up there. That is good value. I think it's a good pickup. I like this team. Like I said, and DBs wise, what have we got? I mean, I think they've secured it. I mean, Harrison, talking about the Vikings, which I like to do. Harrison Smith. I mean, he had a fantastic year last year. The year before, I know a lot of guys in the IDP world with the same feeling of me. We thought he'd sort of like, that was the end of Harrison Smith. He'd sort of like, this could be the end, and it could be a new. And then he has this season last year where he was really good. IDP wise, excellent, and just such a solid player to have. And then they've gone and picked up Marcus May as well, Chuck Clark, I mean, obviously the Baltimore Ravens were absolutely dreadful in periods of last year, and that was because they just got decimated in the secondary, just on injuries. And when they're back to full strength, I think Chuck Clark gets arrow up. Marcus May, obviously, we mentioned him earlier on, didn't we? I like that. I like what he's done.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree. And sort of, you mentioned sort of Deion Jones. Earlier during the sort of the Q&A session. I mean, he's definitely one for me this season. I mean, I've just gone back over a few of the sort of looking at last season. Obviously, as we said, Lucon's disappeared off to the Jags. So, I mean, the Falcons typically do set up with sort of two linebackers, but Deion Jones is going to be sort of the lead going into this season.
It's contract year as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's something else. We mentioned it with Jerome Baker, and that's sort of key. If you're looking back over sort of last season, the snap count's good, the tackle numbers are not as good as Lucon's, but then look where he sort of finished up last season. But they're good. My only slight reservation in area he could improve on, percentage of missed tackles is a little bit high. Double what sort of Foyce had in the sort of same defense, but then I think they were targeted a little bit differently. The Falcons haven't really done anything in free agency. They brought in Rashad Evans from the Titans. He's not going to be sort of the main man there for me. But yeah, as Nath said, we are into that. He'll be out to impress this season. He's sort of he's nearing the end of that sort of 4-year contract extension he signed back in 2019. So yeah, him and Baker are two linebackers that you'll be looking. They're either going to play to impress to stay where they are, or they'll be playing to impress someone else. Simple as that. All factors would point to someone like Deion Jones arrowing up, and to take him in the 8th round. I think actually the more I look at Team 8, the more I think
that's my team. That's the one I picked out of these. I like Team 8, and you went.
I like the offense. I'm just looking at the offense as well. Actually,
I know. I thought he punted it, but he's gone and got these wide receivers are Diggs, Waddle, and Elijah Moore. I love that.
And he's picked up Eckler, Zeke, and Kareem Hunt. I mean, the only obvious gamble on there is Deshaun Watson, really.
Wow, yeah, I know. But if that pays off, I mean, I think that team's pretty elite. I like it.
Everyone else, if Deshaun plays, everyone else is playing sort of second fiddle, I think. But again, we're focusing on the defensive side of it. We both picked different teams for different reasons. And that's kind of what it's all about, really. That's the fun of it.
Absolutely, mate. We can't be, we're not here to be right all the time. We're here to just air our views on the IDP world and go from there. Twitter's a funny place at the moment with a lot of strong opinions about various different things, and Yeah, at the end of the day, if you're in your league playing the way you want to play it and you're all having fun, that's the main thing. That's where it comes down to. Talking about that, guys that want to get into IDP, please hit me up on Twitter at NATO NFL, and I'll sort you out a league to get in. We've got quite a few leagues running, and we're going to have a few more leagues that are going to kick off after the draft. We like to get the draft out of the way, the actual real draft, that is. And then we'll do ours. So hit me up on Twitter. And also, obviously, more questions. The more questions, the merrier. Absolutely. Fire them our way, and we will get them answered. Next week is the final week for this. Obviously, on the night of the draft, we'll be doing this this pod. So that'll finish that off, and we'll do a bit more on the introduction to IDP. Then the week after the draft, we have got Luke Renton on. So Luke is one of our writers, and Luke's big onto his IDP side of things. He writes for quite a few different people, and Luke's going to give us some insight on the draft side of things. I'm really not massive going into it. I'm going to do some work this week on the rookies, but I haven't done a great deal this year. I'm concentrating on the players that we've already got. To try and get all those stats into our head. But yeah, I'm looking forward to starting to talk about some new people, and Luke is going to help us with that. So that's it for us this week. So anything else to add, Bren? You got anything that I've missed?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it all off, mate. No technical hitches this week, which was nice at my end of things. But no, looking forward to next week. Finish off those sort of last 4 teams. But yeah, like you say, it'd be nice to get someone in. We definitely need some help with some of these rookies coming in because, it's not our main forte. But we'll do our best and do a bit of homework, I'm sure, and have a chat about it. So,
absolutely. There's just to add before we go, there is loads of good content out there, and there's loads of content from lots of other guys that are doing awesome stuff. Obviously, from the top of the tree, from people like Tom Kislenbury to the IDP guys, IDP show, obviously the guys at Fantasy and Frames. There's some real good content. So if you guys are thinking about getting into IDP, there is some great stuff out there. Pile through some of the past pods as well. There's some really good, insightful stuff. I'm actually listening to a lot of them second time round at the moment to pick up some of the tips that those guys have put together in the past. As I said earlier, hit me up if you want to join one of the leagues at NATO NFL, and I will set you up. But until next week, guys, keep rushing.